They thought moving into a new neighborhood would be the start of a better life. But from the very first day, one neighbor decided they didn't belong, just because of the color of their skin. He tried everything to push them out, until one shocking moment turned the tables. The same family he wanted gone became the only people who could save him. Stay with me until the end, because the twist will leave you speechless. And if you believe stories like this should be told, hit the like button and subscribe for more. The Johnson family had dreamed of owning their own home for years. After working double shifts, saving every penny, and sacrificing more than most people could imagine, they finally did it. A modest but beautiful house on a quiet street. For them, it wasn't just a house, it was a symbol of hope. Their children could finally ride their bikes without fear, and the couple could breathe, knowing they had built something of their own. At first, the neighborhood looked perfect. Rows of tidy lawns, kids playing on sidewalks, and friendly waves from most of the residents. But not everyone welcomed them with a smile. Just across the street lived Mr. Collins, a man who watched their every move with cold eyes. While others offered polite greetings, he gave silence. When the kids laughed too loudly, his blinds snapped shut. When Marcus parked his car, Collins stood on his porch, arms crossed, staring. It started small. Glares, muttered words, a sense of being judged. But soon whispers spread. Collins seemed determined to turn the neighborhood against them. The Johnsons noticed fewer smiles, fewer friendly chats. Some neighbors looked away instead of waving. Still, the Johnsons tried to ignore it. They wanted peace, not conflict. But deep down, Marcus felt a knot in his stomach. Something told him this was only the beginning. Collins wasn't just a grumpy neighbor. He was a man with a plan. And that plan was to make sure the Johnsons didn't stay in the neighborhood for long. At first, Marcus brushed off the tension. He told himself it was just one man's bitterness, nothing worth losing sleep over. But as days turned into weeks, the signs became harder to ignore. Collins wasn't simply unfriendly, he was actively working against them. It began with small, petty complaints. He called the homeowners association when the Johnson kids left their bikes near the driveway. He claimed Marcus's car was parked too close to the curb, even though it wasn't. Then came letters slipped under their door, anonymous but the handwriting shaky, filled with words like, "You don't belong here," and "Go back where you came from." Marcus kept the letters hidden from his children, not wanting to scare them, but the weight pressed heavily on his shoulders. The family noticed subtle shifts around them. Neighbors who once chatted across the fence grew distant. Invitations to community barbecues stopped arriving. Collins, however, wasn't satisfied with silent disapproval. He wanted results. One evening, Marcus returned home to find a notice taped to his door. It was from the city inspector, citing supposed violations with their property. Overgrown grass, a fence needing repairs, issues Marcus knew weren't real. Someone had reported them, and Marcus had no doubt who it was. The stress began to seep into their lives. The kids, once carefree, started asking why the other children no longer wanted to play with them. Marcus, trying to be strong, told them it was just a misunderstanding. But deep down, anger and fear burned together. Then came the breaking point. Late one night, Marcus woke to a noise outside. Peering through the curtains, his heart dropped. Spray painted across their garage door were words too ugly to repeat. Slurs meant to shame, to scare, to remind them of the color of their skin. That night, Marcus stood in the driveway with a bucket and sponge, scrubbing in silence while his children slept. The hate stung worse than the paint, but he refused to let Collins win. Still, he knew this battle was far from over. Collins wasn't done. He was only getting started. It was a humid summer evening when everything changed. The Johnson family was finishing dinner when loud shouts echoed across the street. Marcus rushed to the window and froze. Collins, the same man who had done everything to destroy their peace, was stumbling out of his house, clutching his chest. His face was pale, his movements frantic. Within seconds, he collapsed onto the lawn. For a moment, Marcus stood frozen. This was the man who had spray-painted his walls with hate, who had poisoned the neighborhood against his family. Every part of him wanted to turn away, to let Collins face the consequences of his own bitterness. But then Marcus saw something else, the look of terror on Collins's face, the desperation of a man who, in that moment, was no enemy but simply human. Without thinking, Marcus ran across the street. Alicia dialed 911 while Marcus dropped to his knees beside Collins. He started CPR, his hands steady, his breath focused. Minutes felt like hours as he pressed against the chest of the very man who had tried to force him out. Neighbors began gathering, watching in stunned silence. The same people who once avoided the Johnsons now saw them fighting to save the life of the man who despised them most. When the ambulance arrived, Marcus stepped back, his shirt soaked in sweat. Collins was rushed away, still breathing, because of the very family he had worked so hard to destroy. The neighborhood was left speechless. For the first time, no one could deny who truly showed strength, compassion, and dignity that night. Marcus walked back to his home quietly. He didn't say a word. But the silence of the neighborhood spoke louder than anything. Everyone had just witnessed a moment they would never forget. The days after the incident were strangely quiet. For the first time since moving in, the Johnsons didn't feel eyes of judgment burning through their windows. Instead, neighbors nodded politely. Some even stopped to say thank you. The man who had worked so hard to isolate them had, without meaning to, revealed their true character to everyone else. Collins returned home a week later, moving slower, weaker than before. He didn't march across his lawn with his chest puffed out. Instead, he approached the Johnson house with hesitation. Marcus opened the door, unsure of what to expect. For a long moment, Collins just stood there, his voice caught in his throat. Finally, with tears in his eyes, he whispered two words Marcus never imagined he would hear. "Thank you." It didn't erase the hate, the nights of fear, or the pain Collins had caused. But it was the beginning of something unexpected. Change. The whispers ended. The Johnson children were invited back to play. Slowly, peace returned. For Marcus and Alicia, the lesson was clear. Kindness in the face of hate is not weakness, it's strength. And sometimes life has a way of turning the tables in ways no one can predict. So now I'll leave you with this question. If you were in Marcus's shoes, would you have done the same? If this story moved you, let me know in the comments. And don't forget, hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss another story that opens eyes, hearts, and minds.